So, haven't done a live video in a little bit, so figured let's just run through it and have this experience together. And I would say that with the CitizenCon right around the corner, it was really cool to see Inside Star Citizen come out at all. This is only an 11-minute video today on Thursday, so let's check it out.
With bombs, we're trying to create that element of excitement. There's an offense and there's a defense strategy. Bombs give a really kind of mental way to kind of start that battle. So if you go to a particular location on the map, let's say, and you bring some friends, they basically set up a tank around an area. We want players to be able to attack that, so they've got a reason to defend it. There's also the NPC side, which is we've got bases now with the ability to have ground turrets on them, and these can include guns but also missiles as well, and they can be quite effective at kind of.
I think that's pretty interesting to see. Both at the A2, they showed the mechanism here, and with the preview we have of the A2's area, this would be the rear, that would be the cargo door right there, the rear cargo door of the A2 Herc. And so basically you have one rack on the right side, one rack on the left side, facing the rear door. So it suggests to us a little bit of what to expect of what can be put in those racks. A few of these MOABs can fit in there. It looks like they have like an articulating rack that can kind of drop.
Offense and there's a defense strategy.
They're very coy about that, only showing one drop from each side. But
trying to create that element of excitement.
If we watch that roll out, why is all these mechanisms here if there's only a single ordnance bomb? If you look at a bomb rack inside, I've seen documentaries on the B-52 bomber, and it shows basically a rotary bomb system, and they also had older school systems that had different style bombs. And you could change the bomb loads out. A lot like the A2, where you can switch between this large mother of all bombs, MOAB, or you can switch over to these more droplet style bombs, smaller bombs that has a whole bunch of them in like a panel. So what I'm curious about is how many of these can you fit? Now I can't help but notice this red strip here with the same metal marks here, same tooling marks, with that same red strip. So I'm thinking that we have at least two bombs on each side of this craft. So that would make up at least, if you're going with the larger bombs, you have at least four of these said bombs. And what I'm citing is literally the video having this articulated rack that allows this to be pulled off the wall, essentially, placed into the dropping zone, and then dropped safely. And then this would come back, grab the next bomb above it, and drop it. The Freelancer MIS has a system a lot like this, where it can deploy missiles off the top of the ship in this mechanical system that pushes the missiles up to the top of the ship and then fires them off. There's other ships that have it. Out of the bottom of the ship, you'd also have the Vanguard Harbinger, for example. It's another one of my favorites for that kind of stuff. As the size 5 torps it can throw through it. And there's only a couple of those. But I think of this system as it's not anything completely new. It's a new style of weapon system. It relies on these fins that deploy when it's dropped out of there. These fins help guide it itself into dropping onto a target location. Instead of using the propulsion of a missile or a torpedo-based system, which in theory would make the payloads smaller in theory, but we'll have to see if that's the case.
There's a defense strategy. Bombs give a really kind of mental way to kind of start that battle.
Yes, I know we're already playing this again, but it bears double looking at it. What I'm really interested in is the turrets as well.
So if you go to a particular location on the map, let's say, and you bring some friends, they basically set up a tank around an area. We want players to be able to attack that, so they've got a reason to defend.
Now, on the tank, they are using currently depletable missiles. They're like size ones or something like that, missile systems. They're very weak. However, in the future, there will be like an energy style plasma type deployable that's like kind of like a missile, kind of not. And the whole point of the Nova tank was during the Tavaran Wars, they had problems with these tanks because what the Tavaran would do is they'd throw like this, the equivalent of very weak, ineffectual, very lightly armored equipment at them and personnel at the tanks until they ran out of main cannon ammunition and missile ammunition, and then they would simply take the tank and overwhelm the human crew. Very clever tactic when you're fighting against a superior military ground military units. What the UEE realized was, as their army, they realized we need to have a system that allows us to deal with these weak, ineffectual targets and not allow them to slowly just slowly wear us down over time, not attrition us out of a position. So the tank has a finite amount of ammunition for its main gun still. However, in the future, this tank will have plasma style missile systems on board, or projectile systems that kind of project themselves as missiles but are replenished over time by the tank's power system. So it should be interesting to see if that has any play whatsoever in defending it from the air. I will point out, though, no matter what type of system it is, it's a very small package. It's a very small system. Really, it's not the tank's job to be anti-air, to be anti-spacecraft or anti-aircraft, if that's ever put in the future. That's the ballista's job. This tank would be defending it from all ground-based threats. But it is kind of interesting to point out.
There's also the NPC side, which is...
So these are the turrets. Now, the last time we left the turrets that were in the game and introduced by the teams, they had a single tier size 1 gun on a turret that could be used by a player. Now, what we're seeing here is something significantly different. I'm looking at this big old turret on top of this structure. I'm looking at this what I believe is a missile pod system or a mortar system, and then the keywords Rich said was NPC run. So let's just go back slightly here.
Reason to defend it. There's also the NPC side, which is we've got bases now with the ability to have ground turrets on them. And these can include guns, but also missiles as well.
So out of these, sorry, I don't know why the screen keeps doing that whenever I click the pause, but I can't help but think that this would mean that an NPC crew would be handling these different weapon systems, and they would be a threat. And this also ties in well with Theaters of War, where we know that's still in development. We don't know exactly how the scaling of that'll be or what's involved, but for NPCs and for players, it would be very exciting and very good idea for these turrets to exist and be usable as defensive position systems that have to be overcome by the attacking party, and also help balance things in any type of large multiplayer FPS. If you've ever been involved in them, like a 32v32 game. It's very easy to camp the enemy's location. So where they spawn in, even with rotating spawns, you can predict them because you've played the game on both sides before. Giving the defenders advantages like fixed weapon emplacements at places where it should be difficult for the offense to really hold easily is a good idea. So with these type of weapons breaking down some of the offense team, then you have the defenders who are spawning right inside the building having the advantage, because the other team has to take a long time to get there or wait for their vehicles to respawn that these turrets help smash. And then basically it can kind of correct that type of gameplay if only a couple people are trying to camp a location that they shouldn't be just yet. So it's that's kind of a way to right that wrong. It's also a way to make missions far more interesting. Instead of being able to just land outside of a bunker mission or outside of a target location and be able to just basically own the area without very little issue, having these large turrets makes players have to make strategic decisions and might have to land out zone, might need to recon ahead of time, make sure it's safe to fly over. And if you do have a ship that allows for respawn, it won't allow you to just park it out front the front door unless it's a really big size ship. I don't think these type of weapon systems are going to make an 890 jump blush anytime soon. So as long as you leave your ship powered up, it should be kind of interesting to see a capital shield just kind of shrug off these weapon systems. That being said, the people coming out of the 890 jump will not just be shrugging them off, or their vehicles. So that's something else to think about. How will these systems pick their targets? Will they focus fire on players? Will they be allowed to have like a type of focus fire where they pick the most threatening target that's doing the most damage or getting closest to the building? That's all fun stuff we're going to have to explore. But I think it's pretty cool that they're tying in those defensive structures and that they're making the case that the A2 will help remove these turrets before you go and try to take over an area. If you have an A2 at your disposal, that will be a great asset to you.
And it can be quite effective at kind of keeping players out, but we want something to counter that. And a way to counter that as a rather fundamental force is a very large bomb, which can kind of push through some of those defenses and give players the other advantage, which is you can come in, you can bring your big ship in, you can bomb some of the early defenses, and then you can use some of your smaller ships that you have with you, to kind of get in there and to take that ground location away from them.
I realize that this is just a test and they're trying to really show off this new weapon system, but look at the splash zone and the amount of damage translated. Look at how all those ground vehicles were knocked out by that single MOAB, and consider the fact the A2 has at least 4 of them, at least as of this example with this scenario. Obviously, that can change at any moment, and these bombs can be scaled back, or you could be less of them in the A2, but it is truly an impressive weapon system, seeing it, at least in this example they showed.
We wanted bombs to come in with a really big impact. We wanted a big ship that could carry a big bomb. The A2 carrying the size 10, it basically, allowed us to do that. We didn't want a guided bomb or anything like that. We wanted to give you like a high-tech solution to the targeting. So, although you've got this massive, powerful bomb, we wanted there to be some skill in trying to hit the target with it. So we put bombs in operator mode, which is very, very similar to missiles, apart from when you have bombs selected on your ship, you'll get your bomb UI. We've got the visual space in front of you, which allows you to see where your bomb will drop if you drop at any point. But we've also given you an option to create a reference point, and that will allow the UI on the HUD itself to tell you where to move to. And then when you're flying towards this, it will tell you whether you need to speed up, move left and right. And then as you move towards it, you'll see a circle. And this gives you the reference point of where the bomb's going to drop. And then if you get it right, and if you get the timing right, depending on physics, and if you've got any wind or anything that could affect it in the time as well, it will drop within that point that you've referenced.
Wow.
But in some future patches, we're looking at supporting a full bombing station on the A2, for example. And this can include things like, a remote camera looking down at the bomb, which will hopefully, in terms of our goals with this, is to move the advantage from the pilot being the person that controls the bomb to the bomber station, because we want people to have these roles on these ships, that really make a difference. So, even if you're not within the blast radius of the bomb, you've still got a chance of damaging and hurting players within the vicinity of the physical blast itself as well. So that's you've got to be quite careful because it's quite a big radius. So make sure you release it at the right time. But apart from that, have fun blowing stuff up.
I wouldn't be. That's a great image. Uh, yeah, Doctor Strangelove so much. But what I am thinking though is that that blast radius may be scaled back. There's gonna be a lot of unintended consequences. I think it's very interesting that they're already talking about. Well, we gave it to the pilot as the bomber, but we want that to not really be the thing. We want to make this bombing station, which is kind of weird. I'm kind of surprised they didn't have like a co-pilot that could set that system where you can set a point of reference and run that circle over to the other circle. I think of War Thunder's bombing mechanics for arcade versus simulator, and I think of how in arcade it's actually even easier. There's only a crosshair, and the crosshair is not there if the bomb isn't able to hit that target or not. If you're going too fast, if you're diving too deep, and then you also have on the flip side of that in simulator mode, you rely heavily on having a proper bomb site, and some of the more modern aircraft actually have like the bombing calculators, which is what they're referring to. Interesting stuff. I think it makes sense if the A2 is going to retain even half of what its power is. It's going to need to fix a lot of these problems. By far, there is a lot to learn from other games that have been at this for years. Um, I'm kind of surprised they don't already have a simple bombing site. To be honest, it seems like they try to integrate as much as possible in the HUD, and then maybe they realize that's a lot of power to put into a single person's hands when you have them as the pilot and you have them as the bomber on such a powerful craft. I would love to know if they midstream made that conscious realization. I'm curious.
This first iteration of bombing aims to bring functionality to the upcoming Hercules A2. And like all features, we'll continue to evolve and iterate with testing and feedback from you before rolling out to other spacecraft that can make use of this potentially devastating new feature. And speaking of the Hercules A2, it's set to arrive in the upcoming Alpha 315, so let's go ahead and take the last few minutes of this quarter's last episode to take one more look at what all is making its way to the persistent universe in the patch report. Let's begin right at the very top of the list. Alpha 315 is more than just another quarterly patch. When this one drops, it'll be the biggest step yet in realizing that vision of Death of a Spaceman set forth at the very beginning of the crowdfunding campaign. And that begins with everything under the umbrella of Healing Tier 0. It starts with the addition of down states. No longer will every ding and scrape a player gets send them directly to death. These down states allow for and encourage group participation so that players can better keep each other in the fight, picking each other up and pushing forward like it's Black Friday and the store just got 3090s back in stock. And when they are picked up, players may discover new injury states like broken arms and legs that impair their ability to fly or otherwise traverse the universe. And that's where the healing namesake of the feature comes in, with the ability to administer treatment to players and NPCs alike. It'll be a big change to life in the verse, certainly not one that makes life any easier for our spacefaring adventurers. But this challenge and others coming down the road should lead to a more complex and rewarding gameplay experience for all when all is said and done.
Wait, was that tape supposed to be like a bandage?
More complex and
Or is that just a repaired suit? I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with the Outlaw armors too much. But if that was a seal for like to stop bleeding or something, that'd be kind of amazing. If that's a on the outside of the boot, what the hell? But anyway, the system that they're talking about with the medical, it is what it is. I'm assuming that some of this is also drunk tech. I'm really tired of hearing about drunk tech, to be honest. But as with the actual drug mechanics, the medical mechanics, very exciting stuff, very necessary things.
Experience for all when all is said and done. And speaking of challenging experiences, the new inventory revamp is here. The new inventory revamp is here. With the death of global inventory and the implementation of local to vehicle to external to personal inventory, the planning, considerations, and ultimately choices we make as players have never been more important or impactful to our gameplay experience. What's my stash like on Hurston? Do I have enough ammo on Microtech to do what I want to do? What planet did I leave my multitude on? Did I leave my keys in here? As with healing, tactical decisions are now coming to the forefront of life in the persistent universe. And between the two, who and what you bring with you becomes the essential question before any new mission or adventure. But two other new features arrive with Alpha 3.15 to help with your inventory needs. The first being the Nik Nax Asset Manager, essential to helping you track and maintain where everything you have in the verse is stashed or located.
Okay, hang on.
Maintain where everything you have in the verse is stashed or located.
Okay, so here we have a little preview of how the Nik Nax systems works. You have literally, you can sort by the system, you can sort them by Crusader, the planet, and then Origin, the landing zone. And then you can then sort by the category of the item. So we have like weaponry, defenses, undersuits, paints, vehicles, technology, armor, weapons, etc. So this is what we need. Mentioned a couple times that the team has already said straight up they wanted to put a search feature in, but they basically ran out of time. They will not have in the first iteration a search feature. So this is as close as we're going to get. As you grow your inventory larger and larger, especially in your home station or places that you operate out of for contracts or for org work or something like that, where you're going to have these clusters of resources, trying to scroll through page after page, hitting that next button over and over again is going to get old fast. But being able to sort by category at least and then jump to it will be the first iteration of something useful. And the next iteration will be literally start typing in Drake, and all of your Drake ships come up, all of your Drake equipment and your Drake t-shirts and whatever else. But you can also use categories as well as searches. If you've ever, gone onto a shopping website or something like that, that's how most of them work. You literally go to a category and then you search the item. Or you search the item and then you filter by category. So we'll see how that works. But in the example I just gave, you would sort by vehicle. And if you have still a ton of vehicles, you got 50 or 60 craft, drivable vehicles, flyable ships, all these different types of vehicles, you could then start typing in Drake and hit the search and bam, Drake yellow dragon fly yellow jacket would come to the top. Or at the very least, a very short list. Unless you're a Drake collector of ships and vehicles. But this is an example of what we needed, and I'm glad to see that confirmed, that that's what this is.
Located. And loot generation, to help when you find yourself alone in the barren wastelands of Hurston or the magnificent desolation of Yila. Loot generation works with the external inventory system to give players more reward for their increased risk in the field. And it's just one more way Alpha 3.15 looks to reshape daily life in the
I mentioned this in the last video, but a lot of these crates are using 30K. I don't know if it's a joke or if that's the common capacity now, but I've been seeing this over and over again on the examples, including the coded crate. When they were talking about the coded crates and the cutting crates, where you can cut them up with a multi-tool, and the other ones are coded crates. That had 30K SCU, for example, just last week. And now this one that you can just right click open, personal inventory, thought tool, personal inner thought tool pit, go up to and open. You can open it and bam, you got 30K SCU of space. And this is, most importantly, this is not like, it's 30K of actual like ship storage space. This is like suit space. So this is a smaller unit of measure. If you look, their chest armor alone, the chest storage has 9K of space. So to give you an idea, this equipment, this crate, has 3 times the size of the armor that this character is wearing. And 9K is kind of correct. On the heaviest armors that are like industrial ones with the biggest backpacks, I think I've seen 18K, 20K, somewhere around there. And that's really pushing it. All in, with every single thing, I might have seen it go that high. And I think that's not the norm at all. So I think this is just letting you know how these boxes on the ground will be pretty useful. I think if you're building out caves and such, finding one with one of these crates sitting as a random item or whatever, preferably just sitting there, will become something valuable because you can run up, place all the valuable ores in there, waiting for the next ship to come in to grab more of it, head back down, and grab more mining done, get more materials, bring them back up, and you can constantly create a new chain, especially if you don't have a vehicle yet, like the ROCs or something like that, where you can really try to fill them up more. If you're just relying on the armor you're wearing in your backpack, these crates that are around will be very valuable. I hope in the future that players will be able to spawn these, and maybe they're like a one-time use. They're a consumable item that is deployed on the ground and then it falls apart over time. So over the span of a single play period, you can use it, and then eventually it just disintegrates or just rots away into pieces that can be salvaged if people find them eventually. But that's just a thought.
Persistent universe from this point forward. And when we talk about increased risk in the field, we have to include the new infiltrate and defend missions, with new tactically based objectives like having to avoid security for completion, or attacking players can't kill any defenders, or classic defend objectives like repel all waves or prevent the destruction of an item or person. These new mission types have a variety of modifiers to keep things fresh, and will continue to evolve beyond their initial implementation in the upcoming Alpha 3.15. Of course, if increased risk in the field isn't your thing, you can take to the skies above in the new Hercules A2 from Crusader Industries. First vehicle of its kind to use the new bombing mechanics showcased earlier to safely deliver death and destruction from far above the chaos below. Plus, the A2 just
There was that cylinder deployment. So there we go.
Bombing mechanics showcased earlier to safely deliver death and destruction from far above
Dropped the first one, and now it's going back to get the second one.
of the chaos below.
So it looks like this whole mechanism rotates outwards, a lot like the Retaliator, actually. So the Retaliator in its forward bay has 2 and 2 two on each side, and it kind of drops the first set. They fire off their torps, and then it flips the entire rotary system around to fire off the second set. This seems like the same idea. It spins around, and then it puts this on that one, and then that drops out. Pretty cool.
Plus, the A2 just looks cool when it makes the big boom boom. In 3.15, it joins its C2 and M2 brethren to complete the Hercules line of stunning behemoth monsters from Crusader Industries. Of course, how safe the Hercules might be up in the skies might depend on 2 additional ships coming later in the Alpha 3.15 branch cycle, including the Ares Starfighter and Redeemer. Whether they attack or defend, they will certainly be looking to bring the pain when they arrive.
This is a big question mark for the Inferno. Is this its ammunition bay? And if it is, how big is the ammo bay? How much ammunition does this thing have? Can it have some type of reload system that trolleys up more material? Because there's nothing else. It's supposed to be a fighter that's basically got a size 7 gun, a bespoke gun no less. So they could do some interesting things with it. But the Inferno has a major asterisk on its side that it can't, if it can't reload and it doesn't have enough ammunition to really finish the game, it's only going to be useful in groups or as part of a support vessel that is taking off from larger ships. Like if it could fit an Idris or take off from a Kraken's decks, then that would be interesting. But and it's an independent ship that many people are thinking of it as. Some folks even have this ship as one of their only ship. This is a major question mark, and we still haven't had a straight answer yet about it.
And we'll be talking more about the...
And this is, of course, the baby Hammerhead. The Redeemer is just plain fantastic. I think it is going to be an amazing ship.
These 2 in depth when we get closer to their intended release during Alpha 3.15's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo event. Outside the...
So there you have it. IAE is going to be the release time for the Ares and the Redeemer. And that's, if you listen,
just looks cool and it makes the big boom boom. In 315, it joins its C2 and M2 brethren to complete the Hercules line of stunning behemoth monsters from Crusader Industries. Of course, how safe the Hercules might be up in the skies might depend on 2 additional ships coming later in the Alpha 315 branch cycle.
so the A2 is basically coming with 3.15 as of this moment, as of this recording today. What is it, September 29th? You have Jared saying the A2 is their major push. The Ares, Ion, and Inferno, and also the Redeemer are expected for IAE. So that means they're going to come for the annual sale later in the year, a couple weeks after your Citizen Con is basically the way I said it last week. But really, you're kind of pushing it. I mean, IAE is the annual expo. It's by far the biggest event of the year, I think, with Star Citizen. A lot of people shape their fleets around it. A lot of people that have started out later who think they missed the boat, I kindly remind them that you can get 10-year insurance, which might as well be an eternity, because it only starts the clock after beta when we go into full game. So we're in alpha right now. We won't be in beta probably for years. And then when beta's done, completely done, and it's fully released as a full game, years from now, that's when your 10-year clock starts. So this is IAE is a great time, to really play catch up on any kind of ship you want, even if you don't have LTI tokens, a ship that you can CCU from to whatever your dream ships are for lifetime insurance to be had. So just bear that in mind. I mean, they're all available, every ship of a day, and then later on all the ships. I think that the Ares in particular, the Ion is going to be a winner regardless of how it turns out. It would take a lot to convince me otherwise, even with the shield nerf. It lost one of its shields during the change-ups and then the reworkings recently. Yes, before it even came out, it got nerfed. But the Inferno has a lot to prove. I think its ammo capacity is going to be a serious problem for it. One thing, though, that's interesting about the Inferno is that I think that a lot of folks are overlooking the fact that this thing is going to be very useful on ground combat. So I could see 2 or 3 of these things operating out of an outpost, defending the outpost from those very Nova tanks, and even the ballistas that I talked about earlier that are supposed to be anti-air. If you have some type of E-Ward that can buy this thing time, or special forces kind of sneak in and kind of disable the ballista or distract the ballista enough to have to harass them enough where they have to move, then this thing can come in and only needs a second because it's got that giant size 7 system on board that's just pure ballistic goodness, and it will rip apart anything it touches. Especially ground unit wise, it's far less resilient than larger spacecraft that this thing is designed to pick a fight with. So I think that they're an interesting breed. I think there's a lot to be said about them. I don't believe that they are going to be good solo. I think either one of the Ares in a group will be a serious threat, and there'll be a lot of fun, I think, at small gang fights.
And they will certainly be looking to bring the pain when they arrive, and we'll be talking more about these 2.
The Redeemer, at the very least, is going to be a 3-person crew. My evidence: the giant gun on the giant turret on the top and bottom that are manned, and then you also have to have a pilot. At the minimum, this is going to be a 3-person crew. But if you're able to field a 3-person crew, this ship is going to do amazing things that it really doesn't deserve to be able to do. It truly is a baby hammerhead. And it'll probably be easier it is going to be easier to fill one of these, because I can see right now, if I can get my hands on 3 people, I'm going to be pulling this thing out constantly. I think the Redeemer is one of those creatures where it's just, I don't see how they can mess it up. I don't see how it can do much wrong. It has VTOL capacity. It's able to handle air flight pretty good. It has all those powerful guns. It's going to be very resilient with its serious shields. I'm looking very much forward to it. Whether it is the steampunk choo-choo or not, I really don't care. what its animations are on the top deck.
In depth when we get closer to their intended release during Alpha 315's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo event. Outside the Precision universe, or perhaps deep inside in the fictional game within a game, Arena Commander's Broken Moon map is getting a makeover with...
Yeah, I mean, okay, so sorry, I kind of drifted off there a little bit. I mean, with IAE, you've got an event that runs all through the end of November into early December. It is not that far away. That right there tells me a lot of what I need to know about 3.15. I think that they're making it crystal clear that the Ares and the Redeemer will not be available in 315 PTU, or at the very least, there's a very high likelihood you will not see them fully iterated. There might be like some things that are they might be in there for a few of the patches, or they might have replace me logos everywhere, like we saw at the jump launch week with the Redeemer. But we might see some work in progress, or we might not. I think Star Citizen in general with CIG's work has been picked on for trying to give too much, and then people latch onto that thing and say, "See, look at this expensive asset that is not able to do what it's supposed to do." So it's probably possible they need to hold it back to finish the polishing, finish the focus. The A2 is a big ship with a brand new weapon system. That is a big undertaking to get that done right. And don't forget the M2 when it got released, all over the kitchen. Everybody hated on it for not having a kitchenette. That's a major revision they had to do that they're still working towards. So in the background, while they're working on the A2, the Redeemer, both Areses, and multiple other ships that they're trying to roll out for 3.15. I mean, you've also got them revamping the M2. It's being kicked back down the line to be worked on, so we can get people to calm down about it. I mean, that's I'm trying to give you the perspective of CIG here. You've got a lot of things, and don't forget, you have surprise ships too. You have the small refinery ship. You likely have the rumored, if you believe in it, 400i, or if you're CIG, the 404, that looked exactly like it, silhouette, at least based on the rumors. So you've got a lot of things on your plate, and I'm willing to give them slack, and I have the faith that a couple more weeks, if that's what they truly need, to really roll these ships out right, to get them perfect and get them correct. I'd rather see that than the 600i Explorer, or even worse, the 600i Touring, where really there's some head scratchers there. It was a really cool concept, really cool idea, and it just really, the implementation just did not work out. And now, years later, we're finally starting to see, with the Golden Pass, with it getting a Best in Show skin for the Explorer Edition, the paint, you're starting to see it come together in a way where it'll start looking pretty good. It'll have some personalization to it. That's going to be a tough ticket, I think, for a lot of folks to deal with, though. Especially if you're a fan of the Ares, you've had one for years. I know some folks that have always felt that the larger weapon platform, which once again is a bespoke size 7 for each one, 2 different kinds of bespoke size 7 weapons. You've got the energy-based weapons on the Ion and the ballistic-based weapon on the Inferno. That is a lot of ask, and also they're not the same ship. The Ion has more built towards the shields and more energy, and then the Inferno is more built to be like this armored tanky system that also has the ballistics. So they're different creatures. At least they're trying to be, and I think that they're trying to gear them towards different goals. The Ion is for sustainability and for bringing down ship shields. Really, I mean that's really what I see it used for most. And the Inferno is more for popping tanks, picking a fight with suicide missions against ballista, and also tearing into different ships. I would say the key components of large size ships. I could see, speaking of the 600i, two Infernos tearing into its engines, disabling it so the rest of the fleet can catch up to ransom it or have a position of advantage to try to take out the ship. I could see them doing that. So even if they don't have the sustainability to knock out the entire ship, they don't need to. They've done their mission, and they can go reload or keep some ammunition in reserve for it later in the fight if allies to the 600i show up. That's kind of where I see them Infernos. Now, that I could be completely wrong about that. That's the beauty of this type of thing. I mean, we're working with the information we have, and we're trying to extrapolate information from that. So if that ship turns out to have a lot more ammunition than we all expect, well, there you go then. It'll be able to finish off larger ships. Now we're talking. That's truly a ship to fear, even if it can only strafe and it's not based on turrets and such. Translation: the ship can't really dodge much, encounter fire. But interesting, very interesting topics. And I hope to see more about the Ares as it develops. I hope it's not going to be something where they keep it close to their chest. We still, like I said, I'd love to just know basics about the Inferno and the Ion, about the damage output.
New tech and features that have come online since the original was first introduced, including a more diverse and expansive map space and an improved scoreboard UI created in building blocks for faster performance and improved maintenance ability going forward. Flash, no.
Okay, Jared, chill. But I think the building block scoreboards and other things, I'm sorry to harp about this, but it's not just for Arena Commander, Star Marine. I think it's also for theaters of war. I think at the end of the day, the overall systems, if I was in CIG's shoes, I would literally be revamping all of them at the same time and having those trackings for different game modes added in, and literally do it once, do it right, and have it out of Java, have it in the blocks, and get it the way it needs to be for that larger implementation. Jared mentioned last week the ASOP terminal switched over from Java to the building blocks technology, and that made a decent difference in responsiveness and load, like in the game itself. And he said something to the effect of, and when we're talking about a game like Star Citizen, every little bit helps. So I think it's the same way for Theaters of War. When you have a very intensive game mode with all these different ships and vehicles and infantry and all these different items having to be spawn in and stream in, I think that this is another example of the last thing you need is an overhead from the scoreboard and the spawn map and things like that, taking up a tremendous amount of resources.
Not anymore.
That's why he's singing Flash Not Anymore. It's Flash based.
Of course, back in the persistent universe, let's look at all the new places you'll go in Alpha 3.15.
Wow. Just wow. Well, we now know what Crusader's offices would look like if they went to Hurston Dynamics over at Loreville and went to the Central Business District, the CBD, and said, hey, this looks cool. Let's make a Crusader version. I'm liking what I was seeing. I'm totally cool with that. They tried to one-up Loreville. There's a lot less gold, but you can see the same angular design, the lighting. It's meant to be bigger than life, imposing, and it's on that once again that angular design of the entire structure. It's a very solid-looking structure. I like that they're talking about their goals as an organization on the walls instead of just celebrating the history of the agency, and also the organization having a focus towards these things that they're trying to show. Therefore, not necessarily hyping a family like the Hurstons, for example, are too busy, celebrating their heritage and their history of their their organization, not necessarily aiming towards the future. They're more traditionalists because they like it that way, versus Crusader, where I'm getting a clear message that they're very future leaning, and they literally have that as one of their goals: investing in the future and creating technology and developing excellence. So I mean, like, it literally sets the tone for this organization from minute one. You walk in there, you can see what they're all about, and that's pretty interesting. And if you're into more future leaning and working with technologies, you can clearly see, oh, this is the company for me. And it's kind of funny. Crusader, this is something else interesting. In this logo, the sword is more fleshed out, which I'm kind of surprised about, especially if they're trying to push investing in future and creating technology. Sword is a very old school. It's one of the oldest weapons ever made. It traces its heritage back to daggers that would trace their heritage back to sharpened rocks and sticks. So I guess if you really want to get technical, but it's just a little thing to me that I'm surprised that this wasn't flattened out like in their logo. Their logo has like that bluish colors to it, and it has that really nice looking, like vector art looking sword. That's basically a sword, almost in name only. In this actual logo at their what looks like their corporate wing here, they have this sword where it's very old school. It's really interesting to see that sword come into its own. It's fascinating to see the old and the new with their technologies. Very interesting take from Crusader.
Including the new Crusader Showroom on Orison. Crown jewel showcase of the entire Crusader ship line, it's your one-stop shop for the best-looking spacecraft in the galaxy, where you can pick up the Mercury and Hercules right away, the Ares when it comes online later in Alpha 315, and then...
What in the heck did they do? Okay, so it looks like they put what I think is a white boxed Ares, but don't quote me on that, in here, and those are definitely shader. So when you're working in different types of rendering engines, a lot of times you'll put in different balls with different textures on them to test your lighting against them and see how it will look. So in this case, they left in like their testing materials. So there you can see the reflective one, you can see the true white one, you can see like the color they're trying to match it to. So it's not a coincidence that's the same colors. The looks like the tone, like the secondary color, for lack of a better term. And then you can see this darker color here. I'm not quite sure what that one is, but in general, it's a very common thing to do with testing materials. You'll put them in, and it's what's done. Now, what's interesting to me is that will they leave this in for the game? I don't think they will. You can see there's a play button here on this big sign here, and yeah, okay, well, that's interesting. I have a strong suspicion they'll put something animated in that'll look like the Ion, but it's not really the Ion. It's more of just like an approximation of what it is. And this is just a stand-in for what they're planning to put in for 3.15 until they can get it online. As they mentioned, later when they get into late November at the IAE, it'll start being actually added into the game.
One day, my favorite ship in the galaxy, the Genesis Starliner. Someday. Then again, who flies around in stock spaceships? That's where Cousin Crows comes in, also new to Orison, where players will get the chance to trick out their spacecraft with new components and liveries. Well, we'll talk about what else when we get closer to getting there. But Cousin Crows, welcome to the verse.
So with Cousin Crows, one of the most interesting things, I was talking about this with a few folks, and I feel that Cousin Crows, a slam dunk for them, would be the 300i customizations. So 300i, 315p, 325a, 350r. The entire Origin 300 series all had customizations added to them that you could only buy in the store on the website. I believe that one of the first things that Cousin Crows could do that's in game, not just purchased on the website, would just add in those customizations. I would have those different pages added into the kiosks that you saw there. And you did see, before I go into that, you did see an Origin 100i here, for example, being worked on. There was custom paints when the customization first came out for the 300, for example, that you could only get through the customization system for a short period of time. I wouldn't be surprised if they do some type of custom paints that you can only get through Cousin Crows, or it's the same ones from the store, but now you can get them at Cousin Crows. I don't know. But these kiosks here, it would be really cool to see that, and it feels like that would be an easy slam dunk to be able to do those, what used to be only in the store, where you can have a purchased 300i in-game or in the store, and then you can customize it in-game without having to spend additional money. You can use AUEC to do so. I think that would really make a lot of sense. I think it's kind of interesting to see the type of weapons they have just sitting here. Cousin Crows, for example, the only thing we have known so far confirmed, because that 300i stuff's me speculating about and pointing out something that would be useful, that's already in the system, so to speak. Customizations for the M50 has an engine swap. Is been confirmed. It was added to the timelines and everything. It was added to the roadmap. I'm curious to see if that's one of the first things that'll go into Cousin Crows, or if they'll wait on that for some reason. We'll have to see. And are these custom vultures? I might be wrong about this. I probably am, because I'm wrong a lot of times, but sorry, I'm a little loopy today. Are these vultures that have been customized? Like, is that the front forks off the vulture? That's the rear off the vulture. This looks like a cab. I'm probably wrong, but because the rest of this is hardware, right? But these two,
When we get closer to getting there. But
that's clearly a weapon as well. I'm gonna go with their weapons, and I'm probably far off.
Cousin Crows.
Yeah, I apologize. They're weapons. That's the front of that weapon. That's the back of that weapon. That's the front of that weapon. The lighting and the design and the angle kind of threw me off a
Welcome to
little
the
bit.
verse.
I think it was just hopeful thinking.
And in places you may want to avoid going, the variety of hospitals and space clinics arrive in Alpha 315 to put players back together when the worst of the worst occurs. These include new locations on Crusader, Microtech, Grimhex, and a variety of smaller installations and space stations throughout the Stanton system. So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that it's better to be the bomber than the bombee. That hospitals are a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. Although players like me probably will anyway. And that it can't be said enough, Alpha 315's new healing, inventory, and loot mechanics will make this patch unlike any other that's come before it. Now that's all for our ISC this quarter as we go into prep for our 316 shows, and especially the upcoming Digital Citizen Con on October 9th, where you can join us in once again taking a look at the future of Star Citizen. Check out the recently launched citizencon.com for more details. Until then, I'm Jared Huckabee, and see you at CitizenCon.
It's pretty cool to see that CitizenCon came together this year, especially with all the craziness that we've all been through. I'm very glad that it was a digital CitizenCon. It would have really been a shame to have some folks be able to go, other folks can, and then, or some folks book their things, and then all of a sudden new rules happen and things don't work out. This is the year for digital CitizenCon to really shine, and honestly, I think we all need it right now. I think we need that community. We need everybody to kind of enjoy it and just kind of relax and not have to worry. If the worst thing we're arguing over is whether or not Origin or Drake is a better company, I'm happy, because that means we're where we should be. And it's kind of where I'm going to leave it with that. I hope that you're all where you should be. And I hope you all have a good night and fly safe.